My name is Lena. When Leo had nothing, I married him. I remember the chill of that tiny apartment, how we'd huddle under a single blanket because we couldn't afford to heat the whole place. I remember the taste of cheap noodles, the way we'd laugh about our empty wallets, our dreams serving as the only currency that felt abundant. He was a man fueled by a raw, desperate ambition, and I was the bedrock upon which he built it. I believed in him with a ferocity that bordered on religion. Our love felt like the one unshakable truth in a world full of compromises. We were a team, a fortress of two against the world. But success, I've learned, is a peculiar kind of acid. It doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it just slowly erodes, eating away at the foundations until one day you realize the entire structure is unsound. The man who once looked at me as if I held the sun in my hands now glanced past me, his eyes searching for something, or someone, else over my shoulder. That someone was Sophia. His white moonlight, as the cruel saying goes. She was too perfect, too polished, to have endured the grimy, unglamorous hardship of the early days. She was the sparkling jewel he could now afford, while I was the sturdy, familiar and increasingly invisible box he'd kept her in for years. All those whispered promises in the dark, the vows spoken before a handful of friends in a sun-drenched park, they curdled in the air between us, transforming from sacred oaths into a series of lies I had been foolish enough to believe. They say anyone who betrays true love must swallow 1,000 silver needles. I'd come to believe that. And if Leo wouldn't administer that punishment himself, I would make sure he choked on every single one. The morning it became undeniably clear started like any other. I walked out of our bedroom, the plush carpet swallowing the sound of my footsteps, and found them in the grand foyer. Sophia was already there, standing too close, her slender fingers adjusting the knot of Leo's silk tie while she chatted about his work schedule. The morning light streamed through the tall windows, catching the diamond studs in her ears, illuminating a scene of such easy intimacy it made my stomach clench. They looked like a pair of newlyweds, perfectly coiffed and absorbed in their own little world. I couldn't help but remember the first time Sophia had tied a tie for Leo. I'd been laid up with a bad flu, and Leo had gone to the office with the tie crooked. When he returned that evening it was neat and perfect. I'd asked who had fixed it for him and he'd said, "Sophia," with a casualness that should have been a warning flare. I'd arched a brow then, a silent question hanging in the air. Leo had just smiled, a faint, enigmatic thing, and stayed silent. After that, I found myself tying his tie less and less. He was always in a rush and I was always a step too late, holding the silk strip in my hand as he dashed out the door. By the time I realized the significance of that small daily ritual slipping away from me, it was already gone. But for Sophia to walk right into my home, my sanctuary, and act as if I were merely part of the furniture, that was a new level of audacity. It's true what they say, people never know when to stop. They just keep pressing further, testing the boundaries until they shatter. "Let me," I said, my voice cutting through their murmured conversation. I stepped forward, deliberately moving her hand aside. Her face stiffened, a flash of irritation in her expertly made-up eyes before she unwillingly pulled back. Leo frowned ever so slightly, a crease appearing between his brows. He tried to step away, a reflexive gesture, but I caught his arm. It was tense beneath the fine wool of his suit jacket. "What's wrong?" I asked, my tone light, almost playful. "Don't you remember how I used to do this?" I tugged gently at the tie, pretending not to notice his hesitation, the way his body leaned slightly away from me. I focused on the knot, my fingers remembering the motions they had practiced 1,000 times. "Do you have plans today?" I asked, not looking at him. He stiffened but allowed me to continue. "There's a dinner meeting. I won't be home tonight. Did you forget what day it is?" I pressed, my eyes finally meeting his. Leo frowned and quickly pulled the tie from my hands, the silk slithering through my fingers. "Don't make trouble, Lena. I have work." "That's right, Mrs. Evans," Sophia finally spoke, seizing her chance. A sly, condescending smile played on her lips. "We working people don't fuss over Valentine's Day." She said it as if I were a child preoccupied with a trivial holiday. I let out a short, dry laugh. "Valentine's Day? Oh, today is our wedding anniversary." I looked Leo straight in the eyes, holding his gaze. "Are you sure you want to stand me up on this day?" I knew he wouldn't. Or rather, I knew the man he pretended to be in public wouldn't. Sure enough, the indifferent mask he wore for Sophia faded, replaced by a flicker of genuine guilt that darkened his eyes. It was a satisfying sight. "I'm sorry," he muttered, the words thick. "I forgot." He turned to Sophia. "Cancel today's plans. Go home." Sophia's face twisted with a raw, unguarded resentment that she quickly tried to smother. She forced a tight-lipped reply. "Yes, Mr. Evans." She shot me a look that could curdle milk before turning on her heel and leaving in a storm of silent anger. 10 minutes later, Leo stepped out onto the balcony with his phone, pretending it was a work call. I watched him from the living room, his back to me, his posture tense. He spoke for half an hour. When he finally returned, his expression was lighter, the lines of worry smoothed away. Clearly he had soothed his little sweetheart. "Lena, I'm sorry," he said, his voice dripping with a practiced contrition. "I've been too busy lately and neglected you. What do you want as a gift?" I twirled the plain wedding band on my finger, a simple band of white gold he had bought with his last savings. Then I looked up at him, a sweet smile on my face. "Well, since you're offering, I won't be polite. Why don't you buy me another ring? Maybe one with a diamond this time." But Leo suddenly caught my hand, his thumb brushing gently over my ring finger. His touch was warm, but it sent a cold shiver down my spine. "This ring," he said, his voice soft, "isn't worth much, but I've always hoped you'd keep wearing it. I can buy you another one, but you can't replace this one." His words stunned me for a moment. They were so perfectly crafted, designed to evoke the memory of our humble beginnings, to remind me of the love that once was. I remembered our wedding day, the nervous sweat on his brow, the way his hands trembled as he held this very ring. He'd knelt on one knee, his voice thick with emotion. "Lena," he'd said, "I especially want to marry you." Back then he was fearless and sincere, with nothing in his heart but me. He'd even grown misty-eyed the moment I nodded yes. But the easiest thing to change in this world is the human heart. And mine, though he didn't know it yet, had already cooled to ice. I pulled my hand back from his grasp, the sentiment feeling like a stain on my skin. "Suit yourself," I said, my voice flat. Every year on our anniversary, Leo cooked for me. This year was no different, but today he was distracted, checking his phone again and again, his mind clearly elsewhere. In the afternoon, his face suddenly darkened as he scrolled. He jumped up and retreated to the balcony once more. A cold curiosity gripped me. I opened my own phone, navigating to social media. 10 minutes earlier, Sophia had posted a picture of 99 blood-red roses. The caption read, "Should I say yes?" The comments were a chorus of envious encouragement. Of course. He couldn't hide it for long. Moments later, Leo came back inside, his expression strained. He grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair and headed straight for the door. "Lena," he said, not meeting my eyes, "I have something urgent. I need to go out." Before I could even form an answer, he turned and strode away, the door closing behind him with a soft, final click. I stood there in the sudden silence of the large, empty house. Then I began to count the minutes, a calm, cold fury settling in my chest. When enough time had passed, I followed. I trailed his car all the way to an exclusive neighborhood, to a house I knew he owned but had never mentioned to me. He was so focused on his destination, on the woman waiting for him, that he never noticed my car a discreet distance behind. Just as he reached the private entrance, Sophia rushed out. She threw herself into his arms, clinging to his neck, her body shaking with theatrical sobs. I couldn't see Leo's face clearly from where I was parked, but his body language was unmistakable. The careful, tender way he held her, the way his hand stroked her back. He sighed softly, and though I couldn't hear the words, I could imagine them. Comfort. Reassurance. Lies. He suddenly stepped back 2 paces. At that moment, the lights in the entranceway dimmed, and a crowd of people poured out from inside. I watched, my hands gripping the steering wheel, as Leo dropped to one knee. He pulled out a small velvet box. The crowd erupted in cheers. I didn't need to hear the question. I saw Sophia cover her mouth in feigned disbelief, then nod over and over before stretching out her hand so he could slide the ring onto her finger. The crowd surged around them, a blur of congratulatory gestures. I put my car in reverse and drove away. The seed had been planted. The first move in a game he didn't even know we were playing had been made. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was a fact, laid out as clearly as the diamond on her finger. And I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that this was only the beginning. The foundation of our life together had not just cracked. It had been utterly demolished. Now it was my turn to build something new from the rubble. Something strong. Something sharp. Something made for revenge. The drive home from South Garden was a study in surreal detachment. My hands were steady on the wheel, my breathing even, but my mind was a whirlwind of cold, sharpening fragments. The image of Leo on one knee, the flash of that obscenely large diamond, the chorus of cheers, they didn't feel like a betrayal anymore. They felt like evidence. The emotional shock had passed, burned away in the initial discovery months ago. What remained was a forensic clarity. He had given me the first piece of the puzzle, and now it was my job to find all the others. I didn't go home. The thought of sitting in that opulent, silent mausoleum we called a house made my skin crawl. Instead, I drove to my old studio apartment, a place I'd kept, telling Leo it was for storage, a sentimental holdover. In truth, it was my bunker. It held the ghost of the woman I used to be, and now, it would serve as the war room for the woman I had to become. The room was sparse, smelling of dust and old paint. In a locked closet, behind boxes of forgotten canvases, was a small safe. Inside wasn't jewelry or money. It was a laptop, a stack of old bank statements, and Leo's first smartphone, a relic from 7 years ago. The phone had been in a drawer for years, but a few months back, a wave of nostalgia, or perhaps premonition, had made me charge it. What I found wasn't nostalgia. It was a gut punch. A purchase record. A women's winter coat, a high-end brand costing $3,000. Ordered 6 years ago, shipped to a P.O. box I didn't recognize. At the time, we were so poor I'd debated for a week between a $300 coat and a $100 one, finally choosing the cheaper option. I remembered putting it on, twirling for him in our dismal little apartment. "Does it look good?" I'd asked. Leo's eyes had reddened and he'd pulled me into a tight embrace. "Lena," he'd whispered, voice thick, "I'll always, always be good to you." That embrace had felt so warm, so genuine. I now knew it was the hug of a consummate liar. That coat was the thread. Tonight, after the proposal, I started pulling. I powered up the laptop and got to work. I had managed the books for Leo's company, Ethelgard Innovations, for years, only stepping back after a difficult miscarriage a year ago that had left my health and my will shattered. But I still had backdoor access to the old server, credentials Leo probably assumed had expired. I navigated through the digital labyrinth, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I started with expense reports from 6 years ago, cross-referencing dates, amounts, and vague descriptions like client gift or business development. It was tedious, mind-numbing work, but I was a woman possessed. The sun had set, plunging the studio into darkness lit only by the cool blue glow of the screen. I didn't bother with the lights. I fueled myself on black coffee and a burning, icy rage. And then I found it. Not just the coat. A pattern. A recurring P.O. box, a different name each time, but the zip code was the same. Birthdays. Every year for 7 years, a transaction would appear a few days before Sophia's birthday. Jewelry, handbags, weekend getaways to luxury resorts disguised as industry conferences. 7 years. The number echoed in the silent room. Our 10-year marriage had been built on a foundation that was rotten for 7 of them. I felt the air leave my lungs. It was one thing to suspect, another to see the meticulous years-long paper trail of your own irrelevance. I wasn't the wife he loved but strayed from. I was the convenient placeholder, the sturdy pack mule he'd needed for the hard climb. And Sophia? She was the prize waiting at the summit, too delicate for the journey but perfect for the victory lap. I leaned back in the chair, the wooden creak loud in the silence. Tears threatened, hot and sharp, but I forced them back. Crying was for the betrayed. I was done being a victim. This wasn't a tragedy, it was a diagnosis. And I was the surgeon. The next step was Sophia herself. I needed to understand my enemy. I created a fake social media profile, a bubbly, aspiring fashion blogger named Luna. I sent Sophia a follow request, which she accepted within an hour. She was vain, hungry for admiration. I spent the next few days immersed in her world. Her posts were a curated gallery of luxury and casual intimacy with my husband. Pictures of her new car, a company lease I knew, her taste in art, matching Leo's conveniently, and coy, boastful captions about a wonderful, powerful man who adored her. It was nauseating, but it was also illuminating. She was young, beautiful, and clever, but she was also deeply insecure. Her entire online persona was a performance, a desperate plea for validation. She needed to be seen as the winner. And that, I realized, was her greatest weakness. A week after the proposal, I made my first move as Luna. I commented on her ring photo. OMD. Stunning. He's a keeper. When's the wedding? She replied quickly, thrilled by the attention. Ah, thank you. No date yet, but soon I hope. Smiling face with smiling eyes. I private messaged her. You two look so perfect together. Literally goals. I'm new to the city and would love to connect with such a stylish, powerful couple. She ate it up. We chatted for days. I fed her ego, praising her taste, her love story. I posed as a slightly naive, deeply impressed younger woman. I learned that she'd known Leo since college, that they'd dated briefly before his startup failed, and that he'd broken up with her because he didn't want me to suffer. She genuinely believed it was a noble, romantic gesture. She saw his return to her as a fairy tale reunion. The audacity of it, the sheer, staggering revision of history, made me want to scream. He hadn't left her to protect her. He'd left her because he had nothing, and I was the fool who had everything to give. And now that he had success, he was rewriting the narrative, making himself the tragic hero instead of the opportunistic coward he was. I knew I had to get closer. I suggested a girls' group chat with a few other fabulous women I'd met online. All, of course, aliases I controlled. Sophia jumped at the idea. She was lonely, I realized. Being a secret mistress, even a prized one, is an isolating affair. The group chat, which I named Goddess Squad, became her confessional. She shared everything. Her fears that Leo would never leave me, her frustrations when he had to cancel dates for family obligations, her joy when he bought her the villa. I played my part perfectly. As Luna, I was her chief cheerleader. He's crazy about you, girl. I'd type. Men are just clueless. You have to give him a little push. Make him see what he's missing. It was through this charade that I learned about their planned business trip to Sonia. There was a legitimate product launch, but Sophia was giddy about the real purpose. A secret wedding photo shoot on the beach. The day they left, Leo performed the perfect husband. He packed his bag in front of me, his face a mask of weary businessman. I have to go to Sonia for the new product launch. It'll last a week. He paused, looking at me with manufactured concern. Come with me. Okay. He was testing me using reverse psychology. He knew the fragile peace between us was predicated on me not making waves. He expected me to refuse, to retreat into my hurt, thereby giving him a free pass. I looked at him, at the man who had shared my bed and betrayed my trust for 7 years. I saw the faint hope in his eyes that I would say no. So I shook my head, feigning a weary sadness. Why would I go? I don't feel like leaving the house. He was caught off guard for a second, then quickly masked it. Aren't you worried? I'll make you suspicious if I go alone. I pretended to glare at him, summoning a convincing flash of wifely irritation. Are you still going on about this? He backed down immediately, relief washing over him. All right. Sup. This time Sophia will be there too, but there will be other people as well. I'll call you every day right on time to check in. Don't worry. He was so smug, so sure he was playing me. He had no idea that I was the one holding all the cards, that I was watching his every move through the eyes of his beloved mistress. While they were gone, Goddess Squad was ablaze with Sophia's updates. She posted pictures of them chasing each other under a brilliant sunset, kissing on a ferry, gazing into each other's eyes during an underwater shoot. The photos were professionally done, achingly romantic. They looked like a couple deeply in love. Now I'm sure he truly loves me, she typed, along with a heart eyes emoji. I, as Luna, typed back, oh me. These are incredible. He's so committed. Now is the time to make it official. Have you talked about setting a date? She replied, not yet, he's so busy with work. Well, I typed, my fingers cold on the keys, you have the photos. Once you take them, everything feels solid. A man only really settles once he sees those pictures. Otherwise, he'll just keep stringing you along. There was a long pause. Then, you're so right, Luna. I'll talk to him. I leaned back, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face. I was no longer just gathering evidence. I was architecting their downfall, brick by brick, using their own vanity and lies as the mortar. Leo thought he was juggling two women. He didn't realize that both women were now me. The hunt was over. The trap was set. And I was ready to spring it. The week Leo was in Sonia with Sophia was the most tranquil I'd experienced in years. The house, usually a stage for our silent war, was truly mine. I didn't spend it weeping or raging. I spent it planning, my mind a cool, clear engine of strategy. I knew what was coming. I had the photos Sophia was eagerly posting to our private group. I had the dates, the locations. I had the proof of his betrayal, not as a shocked wife, but as a confirmed fact. The day of his return, I didn't wait at home. I went to the one place I knew would inflict maximum psychological damage. The villa he had bought for her. I'd gotten the address from a gushing Sophia weeks earlier. My little sanctuary, she'd called it. Using the spare key Leo kept in his study desk. A key he thought I didn't know about, I let myself in. The place was exactly as I'd imagined. Tastefully decorated in shades of beige and gray, expensive but soulless, like a high-end hotel suite. There were fresh flowers on the table and a framed photo of the two of them from the Sonia Beach shoot sat on the mantelpiece. They looked blissful. I felt nothing but a sharp, clean focus. I calmly sat on the white leather sofa and waited. When the door opened, it was Sophia who entered first, humming to herself, dropping her keys into a ceramic bowl. She froze when she saw me, her face cycling through surprise, confusion and finally a defensive anger. "Lena," she spat, her voice tight. "What are you doing in my house?" I gave a slow, scornful laugh and waved my left hand, my wedding band catching the light. "How do you think I got in?" Her face tightened. "I don't care how you came in. Get out." "No. This is my home. If you don't leave, I'll call the police." I looked around the room, then back at her, my gaze long and filled with a pity that was entirely genuine. "Sweetheart, this house was bought with Leo's money. It's under his name. As his legal wife, half the ownership and all usage rights belong to me. If you call the police, who do you think they'll throw out?" She trembled, a mix of rage and fear. "Lena, what exactly do you want?" I smiled, leaning back into the sofa. "Isn't today your birthday? Make a wish. I'm here to help you make it come true." Her face paled, then flushed with indignation. She couldn't form a sentence. I sighed, feigning disappointment. "So, you don't really want my blessing after all?" "We don't need your blessing," she finally exploded. "Leo has always loved me. What he feels for you is just gratitude." Her words were meant to wound, but they only confirmed her naivete. "Oh honey," I said, my voice soft. "How innocent you are. He even put this house under his own name. Do you think it's because he's stingy? No. It's because he doesn't dare put it in yours. He's afraid I'll find out. The truth is, he never once thought about divorcing me. So if you want to take my place, you'll have to beg me." Her eyes widened in horror. "What do you mean?" I pointed to the giant diamond sparkling on her finger. "Show me that ring. Let me take a picture." She jerked her hand behind her back as if I'd tried to strike her. I sighed again, this time with theatrical helplessness. "If you don't give me proof, how am I supposed to get a divorce?" I stood up and began to walk around the room, not touching anything, but making a show of examining it all. I let her watch me, let the panic build. She was fuming, utterly helpless, unable to stop me. It was a 30-minute drive from Leo's office, but he made it in 20. His car screeched to a halt outside and he burst through the door, his face dark, his eyes wild. The moment Sophia saw him, she let out a sob and rushed toward him, seeking shelter. But Leo dodged her. He didn't even look at her. His eyes were locked on me. "Lena," he said, his voice strained as he reached for my hand. I didn't let him touch me. Instead, I slapped him hard across the face. The crack echoed in the sterile room. "Don't touch me. You disgust me." His head snapped to the side, his cheek blooming red. The shock on his face was almost comical. "Lena, what gives you the right to hit someone?" he stammered. "Jacob, what is this?" Sophia wailed, her voice breaking. She reached out to comfort him, but he pulled away from her too. Tears streamed down her face. "Leo, what do you mean by this?" Leo's gaze never left mine. His voice was heavy, unwavering. "Lena, let's go home." The car ride was silent. The air between us was thick with everything unsaid. At home he finally broke. "How did you find out?" I didn't answer. I simply pulled out my phone and opened the folder of their wedding photos. I turned the screen to him. The images of them kissing on the beach, holding hands on the ferry, stared back at him. What do you think? His face darkened, his jaw clenching so tight I could see the muscle twitch. I didn't expect she would contact you. I let out a cold sneer. And I didn't expect you would cheat. You've even gone as far as wedding photos. So, Mr. Evans, when are you planning to divorce me? He rubbed his temples, a picture of weary exasperation. Lena, we're not getting divorced. This is my fault. I'll cut all ties with her. Just give me some time. Who exactly is Sophia? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Did you know her before she joined the company? Did you two meet before? Were you cheating even back then? His face tightened. You're overthinking it. I just lost my head for a moment. I never planned anything with her. I'll cut it off. Don't ask any more, Lena. I don't want to hurt you. That was the final straw. The patronizing lie. I hurled a ceramic vase from the side table at the wall next to him. It shattered into 1,000 pieces. You've already hurt me, Leo. How could you do this to me? We've been together 10 years. 10 years. Through the hardest times we never thought about separating. Why no? Why this? I hate you. My voice rose into a hysterical scream. I was a madwoman, a shrew, tears streaming down my face in a torrent of genuine redirected rage. It wasn't just for show. It was the fury of 7 years of deception finally finding its voice. He pulled me into his arms, trying to contain my thrashing. Lena, I was wrong. Please don't be like this. As long as we don't divorce, I'll do whatever you want. We fought until we were both exhausted, a pantomime of emotional devastation. Finally, I went limp in his arms, sobbing. If you want me to forgive you, I whispered, my voice hoarse, then we'll take it step by step. First, every cent you spent on Sophia, you bring it all back to me. Leo looked at me, his expression unreadable. Finally he nodded. Okay. I drove him to the guest room, then locked myself in the master bedroom. The moment the door clicked shut, my tears stopped. I washed my face, the cold water a shock against my heated skin. Then I made a call. Mr. Sean, I said, my voice perfectly steady. It's Lena Evans. I already have evidence of Leo's infidelity. The photos, the financial records. Are you sure you still want to go through with your investment in Ethelgard? There was a pause on the other end. I'll need to reconsider, Mrs. Evans. I thought you might, I said and hung up. The first phase was complete. He was cornered. The siege of his life had begun. Leo spent 3 days cutting things off with Sophia. I knew it was a performance. He moved her, hid her, but he didn't let her go. A man doesn't invest 7 years of secret devotion and then sever it in 72 hours. But he needed to present a victory to me, a trophy of his repentance. He finally came to me looking appropriately haggard and handed me a single platinum bank card. There's $4 million in here, he said, his voice weary. It's everything I got back from her. I took the card, turning it over in my fingers. It felt flimsy, a pathetic token. Are you sure? I asked, my tone flat. This is everything? Lena, I've done what you asked, he pleaded, the exhaustion in his eyes not entirely feigned. Let's stop fighting, okay? I gave a short, cold laugh that made him flinch. Leo, I gave you a chance. His eyes narrowed slightly. What do you mean? I shook my head, a slow, deliberate motion. Nothing. Just go to work. He left, and my face settled into its now familiar mask of ice. He still thought this was about the money, about humiliation and restitution. He didn't understand it was about eradication. He claimed he'd fired her, but a quick, discreet call to a contact in HR confirmed she'd merely been transferred to a new shell subsidiary he'd created. A hidden mistress, tucked away in a gilded cage. This time, to please her for her suffering, he'd bought her a villa outright. So then, Leo, I thought, just how much liquid capital do you have left? That afternoon I set the next phase in motion. I spread the word through back channels, through the contacts I'd cultivated over a decade as his partner, not just his wife. I was selling my shares in Ethelgard Innovations. A significant block. At a low price. A fire sale. Anyone with cash could buy. The calls started within the hour. Leo's was the 12th. I let the first 11 go to voicemail, each one a satisfying testament to his rising panic. On the 12th ring I answered. Lena, what the hell are you doing? he roared, his voice stripped of all its usual controlled charm. Do you know how much damage this will cause the company? Have you even calculated it? Stop messing around and retract the announcement. I was sitting in my studio sipping a cup of perfectly brewed coffee. That's impossible, I said, my voice leisurely. But if you want to buy, I can give you a friendly price. Lena, what the hell are you doing? He repeated, a broken record of fury. I already did what you asked. What else do you want? I rolled my eyes, though he couldn't see it. Leo, are you buying or not? If not, I'm hanging up. I could hear his heavy, ragged breathing on the other end of the line, the sound of a man trying to physically choke down his rage. Finally, he ground out through clenched teeth. I'll buy. The 8% you originally held. How much do you want? I laughed then, a genuine, mirthless sound. And what makes you think I only have 8%? I let the silence hang for a beat. Right now I hold 28%. Are you sure you can afford that? 28, he exploded. Where did you get that much money? That's impossible. Margin loans, of course, I said sweetly. I leveraged everything, Leo. Our house, my own investments. You're insane, he shouted. What are you trying to do? Destroy us. I let the false sweetness vanish, my voice turning to steel. Go ask your mistress for the money back. I told you before. You refused, so I'll just force you. Lena, this is our marital property, he sputtered, resorting to legalities. You don't have the right to dispose of it on your own. Oh really? I sneered. Then sue me. Let's see what's faster. You filing for a property preservation order, or me dumping these shares onto the open market and watching Ethelgard's stock price crater. I could practically feel him trying to regain control, to smother the inferno I'd started. Lena, let's calm down. Sit down and talk. Where are you? I'll come find you. There's nothing to talk about, I said flatly. Starting tomorrow, I'll sell 2% a day. Every day. Until you bring every last cent of that money back to me. On the first day, he still didn't believe I was serious. He called, he texted, he tried to arrange meetings, wasting time instead of scrambling for capital. So, when the clock struck midnight, I logged in and sold 2% of the company to a rival firm. The transaction was swift, clinical. Then I picked up his call. You really did it. His voice was quiet now, hollowed out by shock. Lena, do you really have to push me this far? I sighed, a sound of mock pity. Leo, you must really love her. I've cornered you this badly and still you won't hurt her in the slightest. The harder I push, the deeper your love for her seems to grow. He went silent. The truth of it was a physical blow. I gave a short, bitter laugh. A new day has begun, Leo. Tick-tock. On the second day he found me at the studio. He looked terrible. His eyes were sunken, his suit was rumpled. The last 48 hours had aged him 5 years. Lena, let's talk, he pleaded, his hands outstretched. Let's just pretend your actions were irrational. A moment of stress. Come home with me. We can start over. I looked at him, this stranger I had built a life with. Leo, I said coolly, instead of wasting your time here, why don't you go find Sophia? Can't let her go, can you? Anger flashed in his bloodshot eyes. This has nothing to do with her. I don't want to completely destroy a woman. Let those things be my last compensation to her, please. I shook my head slowly. No. When I moved to shut the door, he braced his hand against it. His gaze turned icy, the plea replaced by a cold threat. Fine, he hissed. I'll go. He begged for 2 more days. I gave him that. I let him sweat, let him feel the noose tightening. On the 3rd day he returned. He looked defeated. He handed me a stack of documents. The deed to the villa, signed back over. The title for the car. A receipt for the return of the diamond ring. It's all there, he said, his voice a monotone. Everything. Now, are you satisfied? I scanned the documents quietly. It was all in order. Not bad, I said, looking up. Next question. Who exactly is Sophia? It was as if I'd touched a live wire. He jerked back, his composure shattering. She's gone. She won't ever appear in front of us again. Why won't you let this go? I lifted my phone, tapping the screen. Maybe you don't know. Sophia and I have been in contact all along. It was a bluff, but a calculated one. When you finally pushed her to the edge, she sent me something interesting. His face instantly lost all its color. What? She said you didn't meet after she joined the company. She said you knew each other long before. 7 years ago. I let the number hang in the air between us. Just 3 years shy of our 10. She was your junior in school, wasn't she? Why didn't you tell me? If you had, maybe I would have spared you a shred of dignity. His lips trembled. Don't listen to her. She's making things up. She's angry. Making things up? I sneered. She's got plenty of proof. I opened a voice memo I had saved, a clip I'd asked her to send weeks ago, under the guise of Luna, needing inspiration for a story about true love. I pressed play. Sophia's voice breathy and pleading, "Do you love me or do you love Lena?" A pause, then Leo's voice soft, intimate, "I love you. But Lena has been with me for so many years. Even if it's not love, it's family." Sophia pressing, "Then why did you leave me back then? Didn't you say you'd break up with her and be with me?" Leo's sigh, heavy with manufactured regret. "Back then when my startup failed I had nothing. How could I let you suffer with me? And Lena, she chose it herself." I stopped the recording. Leo was shaking his head but no sound came out. "Shoo," I said coldly. "Be quiet. Don't interrupt me." I then showed him the photos. Not just the wedding photos. The photos of the gifts. Every birthday, every Christmas for 7 years. A timeline of his devotion to her, running parallel to our life. A life I had bled for. "But in all these years," I whispered, the rage making my voice tremble, "did you ever give me a single birthday present?" I answered my own question. Of course not. I never asked. I thought we didn't care about such things. Turns out I was the one unworthy of them. "That's not true," he cried, his face pale. "Shut up," I roared. The force of it stunned him into silence. I took a steadying breath. "Among all those gifts," I continued, my voice dangerously calm, "one interested me the most. Not a birthday present. A farewell one, wasn't it?" I pulled up the image on my phone. The receipt for the down jacket. The $3,000 coat. "That winter," I said, my eyes locked on his, "I bought a $100 coat. I remember putting it on, twirling for you. You hugged me. You said, 'Lena, I'll always, always be good to you.' I let the memory hang there, let him feel its weight. But 3 months ago I found your old phone. And I found this. A coat for her. A coat that cost 30 times what mine did." I stared at him, at the man who had shared my bed, my dreams, my struggles. How laughable, Leo. She was worth a $3,000 coat while I only deserved a $100 one. She wears a $2 million diamond ring from you, and I have nothing but this $2,000 silver band. I held up my wedding ring. "I treated you too well. I was always thoughtful, always yielding, to the point that you made me feel I only deserved a life like this." I took a step toward him. "Leo, you deserved to die. I ate bitterness and swallowed hardship with you. Yet you believed I was only fit for that kind of life. You deserved to die." He broke then. He fell to his knees, sobbing, begging, swearing he loved me, that I was the only one. His words, which once would have set my heart racing, now only sickened me. I wiped away the single cold tear that escaped my eye. "Leo, hurry up and get the money," I said, my voice empty. "Otherwise, I'll sell the rest of the shares to someone else." This time he didn't try to reason or appeal. He just looked up at me, a broken man, and forced a twisted smile. "All right," he whispered. "Wait for me. I'll raise the money." As he scrambled, I knew the final piece of the trap was about to be set. The financial ruin was just the beginning. I needed him to feel a pain that went far beyond money. Watching Leo scramble to raise the capital was like observing a lab rat in a maze of my own design. He sold off speculative investments, pulled funds from subsidiaries, even took out massive personal loans against his future dividends. The financial news sites began to buzz with rumors of liquidity issues at Ethelgard. The stock price, which I had already battered with my initial sales, began a slow, sickening slide. Each point it dropped was a note in a symphony of his demise, and I was the conductor. While he was desperately trying to plug the holes in his sinking ship, I arranged to meet Sophia. He thought she was summoning me. She'd sent a series of increasingly frantic messages to Luna, saying she needed to see me, that it was an emergency. I agreed, of course. I chose a quiet, discreet tea room, a place with soft lighting and enough privacy for the conversation I knew we were going to have. She was already there when I arrived, looking a shadow of the polished woman from the villa. Her skin, usually radiant, had a dull, almost grayish tone. There were dark circles under her eyes that even careful makeup couldn't fully conceal. When she saw me, not Lena the wife but Luna the confidante, her posture slumped with relief, but her eyes burned with a desperate, hateful energy. "Luna, thank God," she breathed as I sat down. She didn't wait for pleasantries. "He's getting colder. Colder every day. He says he's under pressure because of her," she spat the word, "and her fucking shares. What should I do?" I stirred my tea, adopting a thoughtful expression. "Don't push him too hard," I advised, my voice a gentle murmur. "Men under pressure retreat. Let the grievances pile up. Let him feel the weight of ignoring you. Then when you see him next, just cry a little. Don't make a scene. Don't accuse him. Just be heartbreakingly sad. Wait for him to comfort you." She nodded eagerly, drinking in every word. And then, I said, leaning forward conspiratorially, "once he's soft, once he's feeling guilty, you bring up the wedding photos." Her eyes widened. "The photos? But we already have them." "No, not the secret ones," I said, as if explaining something simple to a child. "The real ones. The ones you take after the engagement with a real photographer for the real wedding. You say, 'Leo, I look at our beautiful photos from Sonia and it makes me so happy, but it also makes me sad that we have to hide them. When can we take photos we can share with the world? When can we make this real?'" I paused, letting the idea sink in. It's not about pressuring him for a date. It's about making him see the future. A man only truly commits when he visualizes it. I could see the wheels turning in her head. He was so transparent. She saw it not as a psychological ploy but as a direct path to the altar. "You're a genius, Luna," she whispered, a glimmer of her old hope returning. "It's about understanding how they think," I said modestly. "Now tell me what's really going on. Is he still being difficult about the money?" And she told me everything. She confirmed what I already knew, that Leo had taken back the villa, the car, the ring, but had promised her it was temporary. That he'd moved her into a luxurious penthouse apartment under a corporate lease, far more discreet. That he was whispering promises of a future where all of this would be hers again and more. She believed him because she had to. Her entire identity was now tied to winning him. A few days later, Leo came to me. He looked exhausted, but there was a determined set to his jaw. "I have to go to San Francisco for a merger talk. It'll last a few days." He paused, then delivered the line I knew was coming, the one Sophia must have prompted after her heartbreakingly sad performance. "Come with me. Please." He was using the same reverse psychology, but this time he was trying to mimic sincerity. He understood. He'd said why I didn't trust him. He wanted to prove his commitment. I looked at him, at the poor actor trying to play the part of a repentant husband. I gave him a sad, fragile smile. "Why would I go, Leo? Every time you travel, it ends in pain for me. I'd rather just stay here." I looked down at my hands. "It's safer." He was caught off guard. This wasn't the angry wife or the calculating blackmailer. This was the hurt woman he supposedly still cared for. It threw him off his script. "Aren't you worried?" He tried, but his heart wasn't in it. I looked up, my eyes glistening with manufactured tears. "Are you still going on about this? I can't do this dance right now." I was giving him what he wanted. A retreat, but in a way that made him feel like a bully. It was a masterstroke of emotional manipulation. He backed down immediately, relief and guilt warring on his face. All right. Sup. Sophia will be there, but it's strictly business. There will be other people. I'll call you every day. I promise." He was so busy being grateful for my acquiescence that he never questioned it. He left, and I knew exactly what would happen. The merger talks were a facade. It was a trip to take those real wedding photos Sophia so desperately wanted. And I was right. My phone, as Luna, buzzed with updates. Pictures of them in Napa Valley, silhouetted against the vineyards. Pictures on the Golden Gate Bridge. The photos were even more lavish and public than the first set. He was ecstatic. "He's so much more relaxed away from her," she messaged. "I think you're right. He's finally seeing our future." "I'm so happy for you," I typed back, my face a cold mask. "Now is the time to be patient. Let him handle his wife. You just be the peaceful haven he returns to. When Leo returned, he was on time. He performed the same ritual, the call, the weary report. This time, when he didn't find me at home, his call had a new edge of anxiety. "Where are you?" he asked, his voice tight. I gave him the address of Sophia's new penthouse. "Are you coming?" I asked. Then I hung up. I sat calmly on her white leather sofa, waiting. Sophia paced in front of me, glaring. "What are you doing here, Lena? I told you to stay away from me." "I'm waiting for my husband," I said calmly. "He's not your husband in any way that matters," she shrieked. The door burst open. Leo stood there, his eyes darting from her panicked face to my serene one. Sophia ran to him, but he brushed past her, his focus entirely on me. "Lena, let's go home." "Why?" I asked. "This seems to be where you spend all your time." "I just wanted to see what was so special about it." I gestured around the room. "It's nice. A little generic. But nice." "Lena, please," he begged, his voice cracking. It was time. I looked at Sophia. "Show him, Sophia. Show him the beautiful photos from San Francisco. The ones you can share with the world." Her face went white. Leo's head whipped around to look at her. "What photos?" I pulled out my own phone and opened the Goddess Squad chat. I scrolled to the pictures and handed it to him. I watched as his face crumbled. He saw not just the photos but the chat log. He saw Luna's advice. He saw Sophia's gullible, eager responses. He saw the entire puppet show, and he realized with dawning horror that I was the puppeteer. "You," he whispered, looking from the phone to me. "All this time?" "Every single second," I confirmed, my voice flat. "Now, Leo, we're going home. And tomorrow you and I are going to see a lawyer. You're going to give me everything I ask for, and you're going to do it quietly. Or I take all of this," I gestured to the phone, to the penthouse, "and I bury you and your company so deep you'll never see the light of day again." The fight went out of him then. It was a complete and total surrender. He knew I wasn't bluffing. The divorce proceedings were swift and brutal. He signed over the majority of his assets, the controlling shares of the company, the houses, the investments. He was left with a crippled business and a mountain of debt. The day the divorce was finalized, he looked at me across the lawyer's mahogany desk. His eyes were hollow. "Lena," he said, his voice a broken thing. "I never meant to hurt you." I looked back at him, feeling nothing. Not triumph, not sadness. Nothing. "It doesn't matter what you meant, Leo," I said. "It only matters what you did." I stood up, collected my copies of the documents, and walked out. I knew it wasn't over. I had taken his money, his company, his pride. But I hadn't yet taken his hope. And I knew, with the certainty of a predator, that he would run straight back to Sophia. And that was exactly where I wanted him. The silence after the divorce was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It wasn't peaceful, it was accusatory. I moved out of the house we'd shared, the one that held the ghost of every lie, and into a sleek, modern high-rise apartment with a view of the city that felt more like an observation post than a home. I had won. On paper I was victorious. I held the majority shares of a wounded but still valuable company. I had bank accounts swollen with the proceeds of our dismembered life. I was free. So why did I feel so empty? I tried to fill the void with action. I met with Mr. Sean and the other investors, assuring them of the company's stability now that the distraction of Leo's personal life was resolved. I spoke with cold competence, laying out restructuring plans. They nodded, impressed and a little afraid. I was no longer Lena, the wronged wife. I was Lena, the majority shareholder. A force to be reckoned with. But in the quiet moments, alone in my sterile new apartment, the numbness would give way to a corrosive bitterness. I had wanted to hurt Leo, to make him feel a fraction of the pain he had inflicted on me. But watching him break in that lawyer's office had been unsatisfying. It was the end of a business negotiation, not the culmination of a decade of betrayal. He was ruined, but he was still breathing. He was still free to run to her. And he did. It didn't take long. Within a week of the divorce being finalized, Sophia was once again by his side, this time publicly. She sent me a message, not to her friend Luna, but to me, Lena. It was a single line, dripping with venomous triumph. "After all your scheming, what did it accomplish? In the end, wasn't I still the one who won?" I stared at the message, a cold smile touching my lips. She still didn't understand. She thought this was a battle over a man. She had no idea it was a war of annihilation. I typed back a calm, almost pitying reply. Friendly advice while you're still young. Make as much money as you can. Don't wait until you've lost everything. A wife who shared his poverty is the easiest to abandon. Her response was immediate, a flurry of angry confusion. What do you mean by that? He should figure it out himself, I wrote. If I spell everything out, where's the fun? I knew Leo. Ambition was his oxygen and I had cut off his supply. He was gasping, desperate for a win. And desperate men make fatal mistakes. I had my sources inside the crippled Ethelgard. I knew he was scrambling, chasing a massive high-risk contract with a new tech firm. A deal that promised a huge payoff but required significant upfront capital he no longer had. It was a Hail Mary. And I was the one who had put him in a position where he needed to throw it. I waited. I watched the company's internal reports. I saw the frantic movements, the leveraged bets. He was stretching his remaining resources to a breaking point. And then I made my final move. I didn't sell more shares. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I called in a few of the favors I was owed from my years as the quiet power behind the throne. A word in the right ear at the tech firm. A hint of lingering instability at Ethelgard. A suggestion that perhaps Leo Evans was not the sound bet he appeared to be. It was enough. The deal, his lifeline, fell through. The news hit the market like a bomb. Ethelgard's stock, already weakened, went into free fall. The vultures circled. His creditors called in their loans. And at the same time Sophia disappeared. She didn't just leave him. He cleaned him out. She took what little liquid capital he had left, $5 million, and vanished. She knew a sinking ship when she saw one. Her true love lasted exactly as long as his bank balance. The call came late one night. I was sitting in my dark living room watching the city lights, not really seeing them. Lena. Leo's voice was a raw scrape over the phone. It was the voice of a man who had hit bedrock. Lena, you have to help me. I said nothing. I just listened to the sound of his breathing, ragged and broken. This company, he pleaded, it was built by the two of us. You wouldn't want to see it go under, would you? All our work. I let the silence stretch, letting him squirm in the vast empty space between us. Finally I spoke, my voice devoid of any emotion. Come over. Let's talk face to face. He arrived within the hour. He looked like a ghost of the man I had married. His suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt. He smelled of stale coffee and despair. He poured out a torrent of words. Troubles, hopes, desperate plans for a future that would never exist. He was still trying to sell, still trying to charm. I cut him off. What do you plan to do about Sophia? His face darkened into a grotesque mask of bitterness. I've already reported her to the police. Theft, fraud. She won't get far. I burst out laughing. It was a harsh, ugly sound in the quiet room. What happened to true love? 7 years, wasn't it? You're just letting her go. The man before me was a hollowed-out shell. The confidence, the ambition, the lies, all gone, stripped away by failure. Enough, Lena, he whispered, sinking into a chair. Please. I'm begging you. I had waited so long for this moment. I had dreamed of seeing him brought this low. But now that it was here, the hunger for his complete destruction was the only thing I had left. There would be no mercy. Tell me, Leo, I said, leaning forward, my eyes locked on his. Back then when you left her, did you really not want her to suffer hardship? Or did you already know deep down that she was the kind of woman who would never suffer hardship with anyone? He rubbed his face, unable to meet my gaze. He was silent. I see, I said, my voice cold as stone. You knew all along. And yet you dressed up your cowardice as nobility. Made it sound so romantic. Was she your proof of success? When you had a little achievement, you strayed. When you failed, you crawled back to me. Now that you'd made it big again, you kept your white moonlight by your side. To you, casting aside the wife who built you was just another step in the process. I paused, letting the words sink in. But now, Leo, between the two of us, who's really the cast-off? For the first time, a flicker of understanding crossed his ravaged face. He saw that my intentions had never been pure, that my goal was not just victory but obliteration. The last vestige of hope drained from his eyes, replaced by a dawning, terrified rage. What do you want? He asked, his voice a low growl. I crossed my arms and leaned back, the picture of cold control. If you want a loan to save your pathetic company, get on your knees and beg me. He stared at me, incredulous. The humiliation was a physical blow. He gritted his teeth, a final spark of defiance in his eyes, and turned toward the door. "Leo," I called after him, my voice stopping him in his tracks. He turned back, his hand on the doorknob. "At first," I said conversationally, "I wanted to charge you with bigamy. Make sure you and Sophia spend a few years behind bars. But then I found something even more interesting." I paused, watching him. "I've been digging into your past with her. Old secrets are like pulling up radishes. Once you tug, the dirt comes with it. Do you want to guess what I found?" His eyes narrowed with a fresh, deeper fear. "What did you find?" "Thanks to your sweetheart, really," I said with a thin smile. "She was so desperate to prove how much you loved her that she handed me piles of things. Among them, details about that half year you disappeared after your first startup failed. Remember? You told me you'd gone into business with friends out of state, but you never said where." I stood up and walked slowly toward him. "And yet you sent Sophia a gift during that time. A golden Buddha pendant. You told her you'd prayed for it on your knees at a temple, that it would keep her safe." I saw the photo. An Indian amulet. India. A delicate place for business, wasn't it? What was it, Leo? Drugs? Telecom fraud? Or was it one of those sure bet investment schemes? The kind where you trick lonely people out of their life savings? His face twisted. "Shut up. Internet scams," I continued, my voice dropping to a whisper. "Pig butchering, they call it. But turns out the man I shared my bed with, the man I built a life with, was nothing but a common con artist. You got your seed money by ruining other people, didn't you?" "Get out," he roared, his voice cracking with panic and fury. "Emily, enough. What do you want?" I was inches from him now, my gaze unwavering. "What do I want? I want you to kneel. Or I take the evidence I've gathered, the amulet, the transfers, the timelines, to the police. I'd rather watch you rot in prison than give you a single cent. Lena, why are you forcing me like this?" His voice broke into a sob. "I already regret it. I was wrong. What more do you want?" His desperation was like a drug. It was the closest I had come to feeling anything in months. "Regret." I whispered, the word a curse. "Leo, you don't think I'll be satisfied with your so-called conscience, do you? You built your career. You enjoyed your family. You lived your life in comfort. Then you throw out a weak, sorry. That doesn't work for me. You need to suffer more than I did. That's what repayment means. It's not enough until you lose everything. Leo, you must be left with nothing. Absolutely nothing." The air left the room. The last mask was off. He saw the abyss of my hatred, and for a terrifying second I saw the abyss in him. "So," he said, his voice frighteningly calm, "you'll never let me go?" And I, feeling a thrill that was the closest thing to exhilaration I had felt in years, smiled. "That's right. I'll never let you go. Not even if I die." The words hung in the air between us, a death sentence I had pronounced with a smile. Not even if I die. For a long moment, Leo didn't move. He just stared at me, and the change in his face was terrifying. The desperation, the pleading, the brokenness, it all evaporated, burned away by a cold, pure fury. The man I saw now was a stranger, someone I had never truly known. The civilized veneer he'd maintained for a decade cracked open, and what was beneath was something primal and savage. "You pushed me, Lena," he whispered, the words barely audible. Then his voice rose into a roar. "You forced me." He lunged. His hands clamped around my throat with a force that stole my breath. The world tilted and exploded in a shower of white stars as my head slammed against the floor. I struggled, clawing at his hands, his arms, but he was impossibly strong, fueled by a rage I had carefully cultivated. He was overpowering me, his weight pinning me down, his thumbs pressing harder and harder into my windpipe. My vision began to tunnel, the edges fading to black. I could feel the frantic animal beat of my heart against his grip. This was it. This was how it ended. Not with a carefully laid plan, but with brute violence on the polished floor of my apartment. "You forced me." His shout echoed in my oxygen-deprived brain. And in that slipping away moment, I felt a grim sense of completion. This was the final honest truth of us. Then another sound. A loud crash. The door splintering open. "Police. Don't move. Hands up." The weight was ripped off me. I rolled onto my side, gasping, choking, dragging air into my burning lungs. My throat felt crushed. Through blurred vision, I saw two officers dragging Leo to the ground, pinning his arms behind his back. He was still struggling, his eyes wild, fixed on me with a hatred so intense it felt like a physical blow. "Lena," he screamed, his voice ragged. "You ruined me. I'll never forgive you. Never." I pushed myself up onto my elbows, massaging my throat. I met his gaze and then slowly, deliberately, I let a smile curl my lips. It wasn't a smile of triumph, but of confirmation. A final, silent message: I won. His expression faltered. Confusion mixed with the hatred. He saw the smile and for a second didn't understand. I turned my head, my voice a painful croak as I addressed the officers. "Officers. He broke into my home and tried to kill me." I looked directly at Leo, my eyes cold. "I want to press charges. For attempted murder." The words landed with the force of a physical blow. Leo's head jerked up, his eyes wide with wild, disbelieving horror. "No," he shouted, straining against the officer's grip. "She's lying. You're lying, Lena. You don't have evidence. You can't prove anything about India. You're bluffing." He was right. I was. The evidence of his past scams was circumstantial at best. A golden amulet and a few old transfers proved nothing. I had gambled everything on his guilty conscience, on the fear that I knew enough to destroy him. And it had worked. My bluff had provoked the one reaction that required no bluff at all. He had tried to kill me. In front of witnesses. That was all the evidence anyone needed. The officers hauled him to his feet. He was still shouting, cursing my name, a stream of vitriol that faded as they led him out of my apartment. The door hung broken on its hinges. I was left alone in the sudden ringing silence, my throat throbbing, the taste of blood in my mouth. The trial was swift. My testimony was simple, factual. The broken door, the witness statements of the responding officers, the medical report on the bruising around my neck. It was an open and shut case. Leo's lawyers argued provocation, temporary insanity. They painted me as a vengeful, calculating ex-wife who had driven him to the brink. They weren't entirely wrong. But none of it mattered. You can't choke the life out of someone on their living room floor and claim insanity. He was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to 7 years in prison. 7 years. A number that echoed. 7 years of his secret life with Sophia. Felt like a dark cosmic joke. At his repeated, desperate requests, I went to see him in prison. I sat on one side of the thick plexiglass, he on the other. He looked thinner, older, his eyes holding nothing but a flat, dead hate. 7 years, Lena, he said, his voice a monotone through the phone receiver. "Just wait for me." I bent double, laughing. It was a real laugh, harsh and loud in the sterile visiting room. "Leo, I'll wait. You'd better kill me when you get out. You'd better kill me and trade my life for your death sentence. That would be worth it." I leaned closer to the glass, my voice dropping. "I'll happily wound myself 10,000 times if it means hurting you 800. Maybe that's the only love we have left." My madness seemed to stun him. He fell silent for a long time, just staring at me as if seeing a new species of creature. "Do you really hate me that much?" he finally asked, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something besides hate in his eyes. It was a genuine, bewildered pain. I shook my head slowly. "You can't imagine how much I hate you." I paused, then asked a question I'd never thought I'd voice. "Do you regret ever meeting me, Leo?" He stared, his lips pressed into a thin line. I continued, my voice soft but relentless. "Then remember that feeling of regret. Let it erase every single day of our past. Wrong. Wrong. All of it was wrong. From one mistake to the next. Even being born human was wrong. Let regret torment you every second. Leave you sleepless, unable to eat. Pain. Good. You deserve it." I didn't wait for a response. I hung up the receiver, stood and walked away. I didn't look back. When I left the prison, a heavy, cold rain was pouring down, washing the streets clean. I sat in my car for a long time, the engine off, watching the sheets of water distort the world outside. I thought I would feel relieved. Victorious. Purged. I felt nothing. Just a vast, hollow exhaustion. The fire that had kept me going for months, the cold, brilliant fire of my revenge, had burned out, leaving only ashes. Hugging myself in the driver's seat, I began to sob. Not delicate tears, but great, wrenching sobs that shook my whole body. I cried for the girl I had been, the one who believed in love and struggle and building a life together. I cried for the years I had wasted. I cried for the person I had become. This cold, calculating creature who could orchestrate a man's total destruction. I had won. I had taken everything from him. But in the process I had destroyed myself too. The victory was hollow. The revenge was complete. And I was left alone with the ghost of what I'd done. The hollow victory echoed in the silence of my new life. I had wanted to reduce Leo to nothing and I had succeeded. But the nothingness had a sound, and it was the quiet hum of my expensive refrigerator, the whisper of central air in a spotless apartment, the deafening absence of another heartbeat. I donated the money. All of it. Every cent I had taken from him in the divorce. I found charities that helped women leaving abusive situations, organizations that funded small business grants for single mothers. I didn't do it for absolution. There was no washing this off. I did it because the money felt contaminated. It was blood money earned not through business but through a different kind of violence. Keeping it would have been like carrying a corpse around with me. The act of giving it away was a burial. I sold the apartment with the city view. The clinical modernity of it felt like a cage. I moved to a small coastal town, a place where the sky was big and the ocean was a constant roaring presence. I bought a little cottage that needed work with a garden that had been left to run wild. The physical labor was a godsend. Digging in the earth, painting walls, sanding old floorboards. It was mindless, exhausting, and it left no room for thought. My hands, which had once typed commands that dismantled a life, were now stained with soil and paint. It was a better kind of stain. I found a therapist. Dr. Anya Sharma had a kind face and eyes that held no judgment. I didn't tell her the whole story at first. I talked about betrayal. I talked about anger. I talked about a marriage that had died. I was a master of omission even in a room meant for truth. Lena, she said gently during our third session, the anger you describe, it sounds like a fire that kept you warm for a long time. What happens now that the fire has gone out? I looked out her window at a gull riding the wind. It's cold, I said simply. We often focus on the object of our anger, she continued. But anger like that, it's usually a mask for a deeper pain. A profound hurt. Sometimes, a grief for what we thought we had or for the person we thought we were. I didn't answer. But her words seeped into me, slow and persistent as the sea mist. I started taking long walks on the beach, the wind whipping my hair, the salt spray stinging my face. I would walk for miles until my body was too tired to hold the memories. I thought about the first time I saw Leo not as the monster he became, but as the ambitious, bright-eyed boy in a too-big suit. I thought about the taste of cheap wine on his lips, the way he'd looked at me when I said I believed in him. I allowed myself to grieve for that boy. And I allowed myself to grieve for the young woman I was, the one who loved him with a ferocity that had nowhere else to go. One day I was pulling weeds in the garden, the sun warm on my back, when a memory surfaced, unbidden. It was from the worst of the early days. We were behind on rent and the electricity had been shut off. We were sitting on the floor of our dark apartment sharing a can of cold beans. And he had started to laugh. A helpless, hopeless laugh. And then I had started laughing too. We laughed until we cried there in the dark, and then he'd found my hand in the blackness and held it. As long as I have you, Lena, he'd said, his voice raw, I can do this. We can do this. For the first time since the prison I cried. Not the harsh, angry sobs of before, but a deep, quiet weeping that felt like it was washing something clean. I wasn't crying for him. I was crying for us. For the us that had been real, even if it was built on a fault line I couldn't see. I was crying for the tragedy of it all. Not a simple story of a villain and a victim, but a complex human tragedy where love had curdled into something toxic and destructive for both of us. I didn't forgive him. Forgiveness felt like a concept for a different universe. But I began to understand the chain of events not as a premeditated evil, but as a series of weaknesses, of cowardly choices, of a man who got lost and was too proud, too weak to find his way back. His punishment was absolute. My freedom from the hatred, however, was something I had to build for myself. At my next session I told Dr. Sharma about the memory in the garden. I told her about the laughter in the dark. It sounds, she said carefully, like you are beginning to separate the man he became from the memory of what you shared. That is a necessary step. Not for him. For you. Will I ever heal? I asked her, my voice small. It was the question I had been too afraid to ask myself. Healing isn't about going back to who you were, she said. That person is gone. Healing is about integrating the experience. It's about building a new self that acknowledges the wound but is not defined by it. How long will it take? He smiled a little. The rest of your life is still long. Don't be afraid of that. I left her office and drove to the beach. It was a wild, windy day, the waves crashing against the shore with a relentless power. I stood there, feeling small and insignificant against the vastness of the ocean and the sky. The anger that had been my compass for so long was gone. The grief was still there, a dull ache, but it was no longer sharp enough to cut. I had set out to make Leo swallow 1,000 silver needles. In the end, I had swallowed plenty myself. The path of revenge is not a straight line to justice. It's a maze that leads you deeper into your own hell. But you can leave the maze. It takes time. It takes work. It takes staring into the ashes of what you've burned down and deciding what, if anything, you want to build in its place. I turned my back to the wind and started the walk home. The cottage needed its shutters painted. The garden needed planting. My new life was waiting. It was quiet. It was lonely. But for the first time in a very long time it was mine. And it was peaceful. The rest of my life was still long. And I was no longer afraid. The end.